Today is the memorial of the beheading of John the Baptist. The gospel text taken to remember this event is from the Gospel of Mark, which is a novelistic explanation of how John was beheaded. Mark narrates that Herod gave a feast on his birthday, and during that feast, the daughter of his second wife, Herodias, who was his brother Philip's wife, danced at the feast. Herod was so taken up with the dance that he promised the girl in his drunken state whatever the girl would want, including half his kingdom. The girl did not know what she wanted and went to consult her mother. Her mother had a grudge against John the Baptist because John the Baptist had berated both Herod and her for the marriage which had taken place while Herodias was still married to Philip. This grudge resulted in her telling her daughter to ask Herod for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The girl asked Herod for that, and even though Herod was reluctant to give it to her because he had made that oath, even if in rashness, was obliged to fulfill that promise, and sent his soldiers to prison, beheaded John the Baptist and gave the head of John to the girl, who then gave it to her mother. What is this story? What does it say to us? I would like to choose one quality each of three of the main characters and ask ourselves what we would do in this case. The first is Herod. His quality is rashness. In his drunken stupor, he makes a rash promise. He makes an emotional promise. He makes a promise when he is so excited. And because he is excited, he can promise in his excitement everything, only to realize later on that that decision was not the best. We make decisions sometimes when we are very excited, or sometimes when we are depressed. This incident is calling us never to decide, especially about something important, when we are too excited about it or when we are depressed. When we reach a state of equanimity, when we reach a state of balance, that is the time to make that decision, and especially if it is an important decision, a decision which will result in a transformation in our lives. The second is Herodias and her feelings of revenge, her feelings of resentment, her feelings of hate. These feelings prompt her to act and to give her daughter that prompting to ask Herod for the head of John the Baptist. She could not accept the truth. She could not accept the direct speech of John the Baptist. She could not accept that what she had done was wrong because she was so caught up in her own needs. And because she was caught up in her own needs, anyone who came in the middle of that need was a threat to her, and she saw John the Baptist as a threat, because of which she harbored those feelings of revenge, which many of us also do. When we are revengeful against someone, when we act out of hate, when we act out of animosity, when we act out of anger, very often our decision is the wrong one. Like Herodias, if we act revengefully, we need to be careful that we are not doing something from which there will be no return. And that is why the time has come to give up on this memorial feelings of revenge and anger and hate that we might still possess, because they do us no good, they do others no good. And finally, John the Baptist. He stands for courage. He stands for fortitude. He stands for the willingness to face the consequences of his action. John had decided to speak up and to speak directly about what was wrong. He did not care that it was Herod who was the tetrarch. He did not care that it was Herodias who would become Herod's wife. He only cared about justice. He cared about doing God's will, and he cared about the truth. Even as he spoke, even as he performed this action of telling them God's word, John knew that he would have to face the consequences. His action prompted his death. His stand for justice and truth prompted his death. But John was willing to go to his death because he was willing to face what he stood for. Often we might be able to take a stand, but only temporarily. When trouble comes, when difficulties come, we might tend to change our stand. Am I willing to face the consequences of my action like John did? If I do, then I have grown. If I do, then I become mature. If I do, then I stand for God and for love and for peace.